sorry, your meeting was just really, really boring. You would think that just due to the sheer number of meetings we have to attend, that people would be really great at them. But unfortunately, time and time again, I see really ineffective meetings, and they're just not a good use of everybody's time. Now, running an effective meeting is such an important skill for you to be taken seriously, whether you are working with clients or whether you're trying to get buy-in internally within your business. Luckily, there's a magic formula. There is a simple recipe that you can follow, and that distinguishes the great effective meetings from the terrible ones that I'm sure you've attended. So I'm going to share that with you. The first golden rule you should always abide by is don't call a meeting if there doesn't need to be one. We are all suffering from meeting overload, particularly when you can't necessarily see all your colleagues if you're working remotely in the office and see how busy they are. So you want to avoid just booking in people's day, because you can't always get that much work done if you're constantly in meetings. So a good rule of thumb to follow is use meetings to brainstorm, to make decisions, to run training and to ask questions around that training. Don't use meetings to provide updates. In fact, providing updates is the worst kind of meeting. And if you're managing a team, you could actually call a meeting when people haven't done the updates that they need to do. So it's a great way to make sure that people do their admin, because they want to avoid that extra meeting. So only call a meeting if it's useful to actually have people together working on the same thing. Once you've established that you do in fact need a meeting, here are 7 simple tips that you can follow. Yes, they might take a little bit more effort just to get used to in the beginning, but I guarantee they will make all of your meetings more efficient and more effective. So the first thing you want to make sure you do every time you run a meeting is have an agenda. No agenda, no meeting. But the super tip here is to make sure you send that agenda out a day before and ask people if there's anything they want to add to the agenda. That way you guarantee their attendance, and you also remind people amidst all the other responsibilities they have what that meeting is for. Second tip, only invite the people for whom the meeting is going to be relevant. I can't count the number of times I've been in a meeting, and I'm sure you felt this too, where you just think, what is the point of this meeting? I'm not going to use this information. This is not useful to me. And that is a meeting you could not have been a part of. So show the same kind of consideration to the people that you are inviting to your meetings. Does this person have something to add or learn from this meeting? Otherwise, don't invite them. Alternatively, you could just mark their attendance as optional to have that meeting. So it might be nice information for them to have, but they don't need to be there, and they can decline it without feeling as bad. The third tip is around setting the scene for a good meeting. So you don't just want to bulldoze right into what you're going to cover. You have that agenda. So start off by thanking everyone for their time for being at that meeting, and then also take a moment to just get people's heads into the right space, because they've all been working on different things. So remind them, this is what I'm going to cover in the meeting, and this is what I want you to take away from it. So if you're running training, it may be so that next week when we start running this new process, you know how to do it, and I can answer some of your questions in advance. Or alternatively, it could be, I really just want to get everyone's ideas so that we can decide on a final plan of action for this customer. So make sure that you're reminding people what you're going to tell them in the meeting, what you're going to go through. You can read through the agenda for that, and then what they should be paying attention to and what they should be getting from that meeting. It's always really, really, really great to do that. Then you want to tell people how you would like their participation. So if you have a presentation that you need to run through, you can say, I'm going to take 5 minutes to go through this presentation, and then I'll take questions at the end. That way you don't have people jumping in all the time and kind of ruining the flow. Alternatively, you might want that, and you want the brainstorming, so you can say, anyone feel free to just jump in at any time. Let them know if they should be using the chat as well to post some of their questions, and make sure you refer to that chat if that's the case. However you want people to participate, make sure you make that clear in the beginning. And the next really important tip, don't just jump into what you're going to do. Make sure you engage the audience that you have there. So in addition to what you want to get out of the meeting, a really great question to ask in client meetings especially is, what were you hoping to get out of today's meeting? Because sometimes we have assumptions about what the client wants and we just go straight in there. but sometimes that question has first of all engaged them, which means they're more likely to pay attention throughout that meeting, but also it means that you might discover something that you didn't know, and you might be able to be flexible with your presentation or address some of their questions before they come later. Tip number 4, you want to make sure that you're taking notes during the meeting. And if you're lucky enough to have someone on your team that can do that, you can just ask, this person, would you mind please taking notes for the meeting? That way everyone has a record. And it can also be useful to share the note taking on the screen so that when you're typing things down, people can process it at the same time and tell you if they see something a little bit differently, to make sure there's one coherent view of what was discussed in that meeting. You might think that you're going to remember it, but I guarantee 5 meetings later, it's completely gone out of your mind and you won't remember the details. So be good with your note taking and getting that detail down. My tips 5 and 6 are keeping to time and being flexible. And to be honest, this is a balancing act. You are going to have to do both things incredibly well, and it's a skill that you can build. So keeping to time means sometimes interrupting people when the conversation is not going where you need it to be and is no longer productive. So if you've got 2 people who disagree about something and the discussion is just going round in circles, then you might have to say, it looks like we need more time on this topic. I'm gonna make an action point for us to pick this up offline, perhaps at another time. Perhaps it's everyone writes down what they think and the group votes on what the best decision is. But it's your job as running the meeting to make sure that you're not running over and that you're able to get through all of the things that are on your agenda. At the same time, this is where the skill comes in. You want to balance that with being flexible. So what I see in a lot of meetings, particularly with clients, is the client might say, oh, I don't know how to do this thing. And we will say, or the account manager will say, oh, I'll just book in another meeting to take you through that. And what that means is you've added a meeting about another meeting about another meeting. You don't necessarily get the work done. So it might be really simple, depending on the task. If it will take you 2 minutes, you might say, you know what, let me take 2 minutes to just show you that now. That's going to be so incredibly valuable for the customer, and they're not going to have to block out another time in their diary just to do something that you can do in that meeting. So actually make sure that you are getting work done. It will also guarantee your customers will keep coming to your meetings because they're valuable to them. Tip number 7 is to always move towards action. Again, meetings to just talk about stuff and not that effective. You want to think about what do I want to come out of this meeting with? And you want to prepare that before when you're thinking about your agenda. What do I want to get out of this meeting? If I'm meeting with a client, do I want to know if they're going to be renewing, if they're happy with us and what else they want to see, what else we can work on? So what is my action? And you want to do that for basically every single point in your agenda. What's the next step? Who needs to do what by when? And make sure those are documented as part of the notes. And you can even leave 5 minutes at the end of the meeting to say, rounding up everybody, let's just go through the action points that we've got. Does everyone agree? Are there any questions? And that's a great way to just close off your meeting and have clear what needs to be done after. Let's put all of this into practice. So if this were a meeting, I would say, hi everybody, thanks so much for joining. Today I'm going to be taking you through some tips on how to run really effective meetings. So going away from this, you can put this into action in your next meeting. If you have any questions, do pop them in the comments and I will get back to you. So then I dig in, I give you all these 7 amazing tips, and then I ask you, hopefully you found this useful. If you did, subscribe and hit the bell. That's my goal for this meeting. That's what I want. So subscribe and hit the bell if this was a good meeting. To get new career videos every Friday. And that's it. Ask any questions, pop them in the comments, and that would be a really effective meeting YouTube. But we're not really there, so it's not quite the same. Get what I mean. So I hope you take these away, try these tips, and I guarantee you your next meeting will be so much more effective. I'm Eva Evangelou, career coach and customer success director. I've got new videos every Friday. Thanks so much for watching and have a great week.